Do you think it's ever all right to shove your partner if you say that it was playful? Recent footage shows French President Emmanuel Macron being shoved in the face by his wife Brigitte as they landed in Vietnam on Sunday evening. Macron initially appears startled, as you can see there, but quite quickly composes himself because he realises it's all caught on camera below. His comment was, "We are squabbling and rather joking with my wife." And we all know the phrase horseplay. It was just horseplay. But do you think couples can be physical with each other in that way and it is just having fun? Is it okay to shove your partner playfully in the face? And would we all be treating this very differently indeed if it was a man shoving a woman in the face? Do get your calls in on this one now. You may feel very strongly about it indeed. The number is 0207 862 2222. Let's kick off with Daisy on this. What did you think when you saw it?
I do think that there are occasions where couples can be having a laugh and kind of, there can be horseplay. I would say they nearly always come accompanied by a big smile. Mm-hmm. And obviously we can't see her. Maybe she is grinning broadly. Maybe she caught him off guard. Maybe. But to me, that does not look like something that's a bit of fun and joshing around and horseplay. And yes, there are always double standards about abuse, so-called abuse from women to men and vice versa. And very often that's for good reasons, because men are a lot bigger and more powerful and so on. But I just think in this case, no, it doesn't look good. It doesn't feel right to me. It kind of stinks.
I mean, I'm trying to think of a context of fear in which it's okay to give your partner a shove in the face.
Not in the face. I don't think there is no context at all. And I agree with you, Daisy, is that when you look at what happened afterwards, he clearly looks tense, he looks startled, he's caught off guard. When they're coming down the stairs, he offers her his hand to help her. She completely ignores him, and then he shakes hands with the person at the bottom of the stairs. Mm. And then when you see him at the bottom of the stairs, he's like got his fist and it's like his knuckles are white. That doesn't look like a couple that have just had a play fight. Like you said, they would have been laughing or joshing or something, and they weren't. And I think if you are going to have a playful shove with your partner, which I'm sure a lot of us do, it's different from having both your hands and shoving someone in the face. I think it looks completely different. And I think if the roles had been reversed and he had done it to her, it would be a completely different conversation. And we wouldn't be saying, can you ever playfully? We would be talking about how he's an abuser.
Yeah, we wouldn't say, can a man, Chesney, playfully shove a woman in the face, would we? So I'm not quite sure why we're saying it the other way around.
I mean, it's certainly, I've never done that with my wife, even in jest, But, we don't know the context of this at all. It was mostly out of shot, and it was a moment between the two of them. You're right, girls, it does not look good. It doesn't look like they're playing around.
No, or having fun.
No,
because otherwise she'd emerge laughing, he'd be laughing, they'd be like, oh, sorry, we were just, punching each other or giving each other a shove. I mean, it's
and it never is okay to, hands in the face like that.
And the reason
either way, man to woman, woman to man.
And the reason why we're discussing it is because he's tried to fob it off, isn't it? Oh, we're just joking around. Oh, this is just a joke.
And actually, it was worse than that. The initial reaction coming out from the Élysée Palace, from the president's office, was this was all sort of AI bot, Russian interference.
Oh
really trying to pull the wool.
And then they had to admit that actually it was real.
It was bona fide and it was genuine, but actually it wasn't what it looked like. Now, of course, it's perfectly possible. I mean, it wasn't what it looked like. I think it exactly was what it looked like. What we don't know is what had happened immediately before that. But that opens a whole nother can of worms. Had there already been some sort of
and also
inappropriateness.
Theirs is a particularly, I'm going to use a euphemism, intriguing relationship, given that she left her husband and 3 children for him when she was his teacher and he was 15 years old. Yeah. So people have always wondered, obviously you can't help it, what's the chemistry, who's in charge? Your teacher's so much older than you. Is she the boss of the relationship? Not that I have any insight at all into it, I don't, but you can't help wondering. And then you see her giving him what certainly appears to be a shove in the face, and you wonder whether that's been characteristic of the relationship the whole way through, which of course we don't know. However, I'm not at all surprised to see the calls coming in thick and fast on this one. Let's go to Jax in Suffolk. Hi, Jax. What's your take on this one?
Hello.
Hi.
How long have you got, Vanessa?
Well, not too long. Talk nice and fast because we're on the telly.
Listen, if everybody's okay with it, if your partner's okay with it, of course it's all right. If you're not hurting each other, it's okay. We've been together for 16 years, and we're like a couple of kids sometimes. We sort of poke each other. We tussle, and we rough and tumble sometimes, and I'll push him onto the bed, if you know what I mean, Vanessa.
I certainly know what you mean. I have fond memories of doing something very similar myself. But I'm wondering, Jax, whether you do kind of grab him and actually shove him in the face, what looks like quite hard. I mean, poking in the ribs, tickling, shoving on the bed as a sexy thing, that's all rough and tumble. That's all kind of what you'd call horseplay, isn't it? And everybody understands that, I think.
Exactly.
But the face thing, what about that?
No, I didn't think that was too good at all, and it didn't look good. Do you know what I mean? It looked disrespectful, and when you're doing that to somebody's face, I don't think that's rough and tumble.
Right, so looking at it, you thought that if they were being like physically playful, you totally get it. In fact, you do it, but you don't do that. Right, okay.
No, I wouldn't like slap his face or push him in the face or anything like. I might ruffle his hair, in a silly way, but no.
And question, if he were to do that to you, how would you feel?
I wouldn't like it. No, I wouldn't like it. Because I've been in an abusive relationship many years ago.
Right.
And so I know what abuse is like. And that to me would bring back too many memories, if you know what I mean.
I do know what you mean. Jax, what a great call and so honest. Thank you. Let me just bring Afua in to this because, Jax says she's been in an abusive relationship. She knows what that's like. And that kind of push in the face would bring back all those memories for her. And I think you have been in a relationship once before, a bit like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I have been. And like Jax, to see that happening was actually a little bit triggering for me. And I think you can really tell the difference. And I could really tell the difference in my relationship. What's the difference between play fighting and what's the difference between someone showing aggression towards you? We do not know the context of what happened between the two of them. But to me, that looked aggressive, hands in the face, shoving him away. And also the reaction from him definitely wasn't one of, oh, we're just having a jest. And I think, especially in the face, it's very, very personal, isn't it? And so, I think for me, there's a real difference between play fighting and someone that's aggressively acting out on another person.
And I just want to add in another thing. She knew they were on a plane. She knew he was about to make a public appearance. She knew he was going to have to walk down those steps. She was absolutely taking it, I suppose she thought, to the wire, or maybe purposely letting it go over the wire so people would see it.
That's exactly the thing, Vanessa, because there have been occasions, plenty of occasions where somebody gets something wrong. You think you're being terribly funny and actually you get it wrong and you startle the other person. But if that happens and it's somebody you love, you go, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. That was meant to be a joke. I got you in the face by accident. I'm sorry. And you would see that in his face if she had done that off camera. You would see him saying, oh, okay, I'm sorry I got startled.
Or you might see her giving him a little kiss or something, a little kiss on the cheek or stroking his face. I was so sorry, I didn't, that kind of a thing. Let's go to Maria in Portsmouth. Maria, you didn't like the look of this either. Thanks so much for calling.
Right, let's just call this out as we need to. If that was a man who had done that to a woman, we'd be in uproar about it. What she did was abuse her partner.
I mean, it is difficult to say that. That's a very sort of strong way of describing it, given that we don't know what happened before and we don't quite know what happened after.
We have seen pictures of men being aggressive to women, and news channels would say they were abusive to that person. What we saw was a woman putting her hand on her husband. Now, if he'd have done that to her, what would people be saying?
Yeah, they'd be horrified. Yes.
So let's just call this out. It is not acceptable, whether you are a man or a woman, doing that to your partner.
And Maria makes a really, really good point, because if you do imagine, let's say this was, a man doing this, pictures of a man doing it to a woman, we would all be in uproar and saying, she must come out and say something about being the victim of that, and he must come out and say something about being the perpetrator of that. And again, because it's the other way around this time, what do we expect them to do? Because he is, he's in that position, and you can't really imagine, and this is sexist of society, him coming out and saying, yes, she shouldn't have done that, because that immediately makes him look like a victim.
Yeah.
And we're not, most of us in society aren't ready to see women being the abusers and men being the victim, because we're still stuck in the dark ages on some of those issues. It makes it even more complicated.
Domestic abuse of men by women is obviously much less than domestic abuse of women by men, but it does exist.
But it
still definitely exists. Yeah. On the other hand, all we do know is that President Macron came straight out and said it was playful.
But he has to do that, because if, like Daisy says, we see him as a victim, that completely undermines his position as the president of France. So he has to deny it. He has to, say it's AI, Russia, bots, and gaslight everyone.
Yeah, it would change everything in his life.
Exactly.
And I kind of feel like it has already.
You mean you think it's a kind of defining moment for him?
Oh, I totally think so. And that's never going away. Because it's out there now. You said it went viral in seconds, you know.
Yeah, and we can see why, because everyone's just so astounded by it. And actually, many people absolutely horrified, downright horrified. Let's go to Paul in Bristol, see what he thinks. Hi, Paul. Thanks for ringing.
Hello, Vanessa and colleagues.
What do you think, Paul?
Okay, I was wondering if you could hear me correctly. To be honest with you, I think it's disgraceful.
Right.
And you can see the clues by his behaviour, her behaviour, even if you could call it astonishment in some respect, by the flight crew, the airplane crew. You know, he even offered her his arm to go down the staircase afterwards. She ignored that. Yep. So all these are little clues to what probably, the mindset of them, both before, whilst it happened. Sorry about my breathing. I was exercising.
Can I ask you something, Paul? Do you think that sometimes, people can get very irritated with other people in a relationship? Your partner can really just rub you up the wrong way. Your temper boils over. You're cross. You're hot. Whatever it is, and it's if it's a one-off, if it's not often, if it hardly ever happens, it's okay, or do you think it just is not okay? It's crossed the line.
I personally, I totally understand what you just said, and of course, we get in relationships where, our partners may show frustration towards us, and sometimes it might cross the boundary, as in this particular case, from my point of view. In relationships, you get to know your other half over time, and you set boundaries inadvertently, et cetera. But I think it's a disgrace. As the lady said before, it doesn't really matter whether it's male towards female or female towards male. You shouldn't put your hands on another human being in that respect in an aggressive manner. Okay, we have playful times, etc., but that isn't, for me, that isn't play. I don't need to know exactly the facts of the matter beforehand. He's the president of France, or the prime minister of France, I think president, and they're going on a state visit to meet he's staying abroad in Thailand, I believe.
Vietnam, yes, absolutely.
She could have taken his neck off. She could have broken his neck.
But you're taking that a little bit further, maybe, than it should go. But Paul, thank you very much. So the words that people are using are very strong here. It's a disgrace, it's abuse, it's appalling, and people aren't sort of going with it. Well, it was only a woman to a man, so it's different. They're not really doing that, Afua. People really seem very affronted by it indeed.
And I'm glad, because we shouldn't have this double standard. And, Daisy, I think you probably put it best that we absolutely do, because men are generally bigger than women and all the rest of that. But I think that you have to draw a line, that there should be no violence in relationships whatsoever, no aggression shown towards another person. Of course, play fighting is fine, but if that was play fighting, we would have seen very different reactions from both of them, which we did not see.
The body language would have been different.
Exactly. And that's just not what's happened. And I think it's good that we are calling out as it is, but I wish President Macron would get on board with calling out as it is as well.
He can't though, can he?
No, I think the other thing is that had it not taken him by surprise in that way, to the extent that he couldn't really put a good face on it straight away, and she was not acting for the cameras either, because she could have grabbed his arm,
she's fuming,
and giggled,
they were in the
and
moment,
smiled.
weren't they?
They really didn't seem to be able to, as they say, style it off or front it up at all. Let's go to Sharifa. Sharifa, you didn't like it at all.
I found it totally appalling.
And that was because it's
totally appalling.
Right, you thought it seemed very aggressive, indeed.
Oh, definitely. I've been there. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
And you do either way. You do not shove each other in the face. You know, playful fighting, there's a difference. You could totally see that was aggressive.
Yeah.
What do you feel should happen next, Sharifa? If you were scripting this story, what would you want the president or his wife, or what do you think should happen now?
Oh, well, I think there's something going on definitely between them that is very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a lot younger than her, so she's you know, sort of, she's quite. You could see on there she's a very aggressive woman, I think, you know, and he looked quite frightened.
I mean, it is an extraordinary kind of state of
It
affairs.
is.
Yeah,
And you just don't do it, do you? Do you know what I mean?
And as Sharifa said, I'm sure he was frightened. Now, we don't know whether he was frightened because he was
And we
being
don't know
attacked.
what goes on behind closed doors.
We don't know what goes on behind closed doors. And we also don't know whether he was frightened because of how it looked or whether he was frightened for himself.
yeah.
And
I think it was more the first thing you said, like
Of how
he was
it-
worried
of how
about how
it-
it was going to show.
And Vanessa, when you were saying if you could write this script or write this story, and of course, you know, politicians and their, you know, and first ladies as she is, have people who literally do that, who will now be sitting down thinking, how on earth can we spin this?
Yeah.
Though it's a bit late now, isn't
well,
it?
the trouble is there are only two explanations, really.
Yeah.
One explanation is she attacked him and he was the victim. The other explanation is there was an ongoing fight between the two of them in which, you know, perhaps he was attacking her and she was retaliating, but we only saw
The end of that. Tip of the
Now,
iceberg.
from his point of view, he's either the aggressor or the victim. And as I was saying before, neither of those are easy to spin because
No.
they're both very, very damaging.
And they didn't
for
handle
him.
it very well with saying that it was AI.
No.
You know, I mean, it was
Ridiculous.
a
For
terrible
clarity, it
decision.
wasn't. It was not AI. It was real,
Yeah.
and they weren't able to style it off or pretend it was AI because it wasn't. So there it remains. I mean, if they were going to spin it, they should have spun it. And I'm not sure what they would have done, but they haven't done it, have they?
No.
Unless he would have said it was a big joke that we always have. She always does this just before the doors open. This is the first. I mean, you know, you can think on your
never
feet and
know.
say
Yeah,
something. You know, just before the doors open,
Yeah.
and this is the only time it's actually been caught on camera. We can't believe it. We've been doing this for 20 years.
He sort of did. He said, "Oh, this is just horseplay."
Yeah, but no one bought it,
nobody
did they?
bought it.
None of our
Yeah.
viewers seem to have bought it. Let's go to Richard in Edinburgh. How do you think about this, Richard? What do you think?
Well, I've got a very simple explanation for all of this. It's called Gallic way of living together. I've lived in France. I've spent time with a French family when I was in my teens, and the lady of the family, the mother, was quite dominant, and she had an explosive temper. It didn't take anything for her to go off. And I'm absolutely certain, based on all the experience I've had over 50 years that I still work in France, by the way, the French people blow hot and cold, and that's what's happened. And then they probably ended up in bed together having passionate sex.
Oh, God, this is Richard's personal fantasy. I'm too young. I don't know
No,
you,
not
Richard. I
her.
can't share
I
these
mean-
moments with you on television. Oh, my
I'm
God,
just
passionate
simply saying
sex?
that
Oh.
They get temperamental, and then they have the best time of their lives afterwards.
Right.
Richard.
I mean, I think this is about Richard. I think this is Richard's personal journey through life.
I think
That's why he
Richard's
spent so
telling
much
us,
time in France.
what happened
He obviously
to him.
loves it. But I mean, that's not what I saw there. Richard, thank you. Let's go to Chesney. Is that what you saw, like passionate, explosive temper followed by make-up sex of a wonderfully Gallic nature?
No, I mean, come on. I think that's taking it a little bit too far, Richard. You know, it's... listen, we don't know what happened. We don't know if they ended up in bed together afterwards. But my thoughts are, I don't think they did today.
I mean, I think Richard has a point in that the French attitude towards sex and towards infidelity and towards argument is clearly, particularly in political circles, is clearly very different to ours. There are things that they will put up with, and there are things that they won't. And certainly, they do wear their heart on their
of
sleeve
course.
more than we do. We are famously stitched up and buttoned up, and we don't, and sort of stiff upper lip and all that. So he certainly has a point. My gut still tells me that this is not what he saw.
You can't just
but
blame
he
it
is-
on the way that different cultures, behave with each other.
'cause you
It's like
can't excuse-
my wife is of Cuban descent, and obviously Latinos are a little bit more, fiery and everything else. But she's never put her hands on my face in that way.
No, I mean, and also, there's something, I don't know, a Gallic shrug, or, kissing you on both cheeks. Okay, and maybe arguing a bit more loudly than we might argue. But shoving in the face, I'm not sure that's part of the repertoire, the French repertoire, Gallic or not. What do you think?
No, I don't think so. I think, I don't think we can use culture as a way to excuse bad behaviour.
Agreed.
And this is
That's
just
good. I might quote that. I might have that. I might have that printed on a tea towel.
There you
That's
go.
very good.
You can have
Can't
that.
use culture as a way to excuse bad behaviour. That's damn good, Afua. Well worth it.
Thank you.
Excellent. Let's go to Sarah in Gloucestershire. What do you think,
5 points.
Sarah? Do you think this is almost like a gateway bit of behaviour?
Absolutely. I was speaking earlier and saying, I'm sorry to disagree with your Richard who just called in, but my mother was a continental. She could be really fiery, but she wouldn't have slapped my father in the face. She might have shoved him on the arm and had a laugh about something, but that's what have some self-control.
Yeah.
And I think this is about a lack of self-control. I had a lovely friend, I thought she was a lovely friend, who married another friend of mine. And I used to visit them regularly and unfortunately had to witness her on a few occasions beat the living daylights out of her beautiful husband, who was charming, gentle, worshipped her.
Oh, my God. And she did this in front of you, Sarah.
Of their son. And I had to stand up and say, stop this right now. This is horribly embarrassing. I'm here as your guest. Your little boy of 8 years old is there. This isn't acceptable. And eventually it got so bad he did actually leave.
Goodness.
But he didn't want to. But it was a dreadful thing to witness. I had to witness someone I thought was a lovely, charming lady turn into a complete monster in front of my eyes on several occasions.
Can I just ask, Sarah, when you sorry to interrupt, but when you tackled her on it and said, this is not acceptable in any way, I can't be witnessing this is all wrong, and you certainly shouldn't be doing it in front of your child or doing it at all. What did she say? What was her explanation for what
she turned on me? She turned on me, basically told me to mind my own business, and I said, well, unfortunately, she'd made it my business because I was in the room.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
And I said, and I wasn't prepared to see her do that.
And
I
when
cared for her husband and her daughter and her son, and I said I wasn't prepared to sit and take that behaviour in front of me when it was obviously going to affect her child as well as her husband.
And while she was doing it, did he retaliate or did he just stand still?
No, he just cowered.
Gosh.
Oh, poor.
And it was heartbreaking.
Yeah. Really sad.
Awful, absolutely awful. Thank you so much for ringing. Gosh, that's what we mean when we say that domestic violence can go both ways. Yeah. Let's talk to Amy in Carlisle, who's got, I think, a different take on this. Hi, Amy.
I think I've got the opposite take to the whole world by the looks of it. I don't think there's anything in it whatsoever, and I think it's all been blown out of proportion. I mean, if you play the video again, you see her, the door's open, he's facing the door but looking at her. Now, if that was you, all she's done is put her hand up and said, look at them, not me.
But we've just seen the footage again. I mean, everybody watching has literally just seen it again. And, the hands come up.
Look, she's saying, look at them. They might have been having words beforehand. She's saying, look at them, not me. If he'd been facing her, his shoulders, she'd have grabbed his shoulder and turned him physically and said, look at them, not me.
No. I feel as if you're seeing different footage, Amy, from everyone else. That's why I think you've got a different spin on it. I mean, what do you think?
We don't know the context of what was happening, though, do we?
Daisy and I just did a reenactment.
Okay, so the door is opening here.
Yes.
Okay, so
she thinks that we're out of, I think what Amy was saying is she thinks we're out of shot, but we're kind of having an argument.
So I'm Brigitte and you're Emmanuel.
Right.
Okay, so
I should be really short.
Okay, and I'm really old. and am I turning your face to look at
Yes, to say
look
they're
over
looking
there.
at you, or to say concentrate.
But why wouldn't I just say look over there? As opposed
because you're in the middle of a row and he's saying
Yeah.
he's trying to get the last word, and I'm just trying to imagine. He's trying to get the last
Even
word.
if that's what the fight was about, it's not okay.
No, yes. I don't... I see what Amy's tried to do there, but I don't quite think that's working.
No, Amy, thanks for the suggestion,
Can I
though.
stop being old
Let's
now?
talk to Carl in the West Midlands. You can see the calls, so many calls on this, you see, because everyone's kind of emotionally immediately responds to it. Carl, what did you think? You think this should be taken quite seriously?
Hiya, hello to you all. I find it quite bizarre, really. What we've seen there is an assault between two partners, which means it's a domestic assault. It is abuse. What happened before, what happened after, yes, it's part of the story.
Yeah.
But it's abuse. And like I think the lady in yellow, forgive me the name,
Daisy, yeah.
she touched on it. Yeah, we're generations behind recognising that men who don't report it, who don't talk, are equally capable of being victims of abuse.
Yes.
And I think to design abuse out of a household, to get rid of it altogether, we all need the same support, men, women, children. It's abuse. It's just bizarre that people can't see it for that because they're just blind to it. If you're a man, you can't be a victim. You can.
And Cole, you know, so many men obviously don't come forward because they feel that it's like not manly, it's not macho. You know, they don't want to say that my wife or my girlfriend has been beating me up or physically abusing me. They don't want to. And you can, I suppose, see if you're president of France and this were to be the case, which we don't know if it is actually abuse or not, we have no idea. But if it were to be, you could see why as a leader, a world leader, you know, as you see, you know, on the world stage, he might not want to come forward either, might he?
Yeah, it's a really difficult subject to talk about because if you voice it, you sound like you're against women, and obviously there's a massive support for women, rightfully so. There should be. Yeah. But obviously, the current times just makes the divide even bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So men won't come forward. They feel ashamed. They just dismiss it themselves, and even society. Yeah. It's not recognised the same as it. It's completely different.
I really appreciate the call, and I'm not going to ask you whether it's happened to you or not, but I kind of feel from the tone of your voice that maybe you've got a kind of deeper understanding of this kind of situation. Really, thank you for the call.